On August 13th, 1899, Alfred Joseph Hitchcock was born in the flat above his parents' leased greengrocer's shop at 517 High Road, Leytonstone in Essex, on the outskirts of East London, the youngest of three children of William Edgar Hitchcock and Emma Jane Hitchcock, who was born Whelan. He was a well-behaved boy, and yet could not remember ever having a playmate. One of his favorite stories for interviewers was about his father sending him to the local police station with a note when he was 5 years old. The policeman looked at the note and locked him in a cell for 5 minutes, saying, "This is what we do to naughty boys." The experience left him with a lifelong fear of policemen, and he said that he wouldn't even drive a car in case he got a parking ticket. When Hitchcock was 6 years old, his family moved to Limehouse and leased two stores at 130 and 175 Salmon Lane. They ran a fish and chip shop and lived above it. When he was 11 years old, his family moved to Stepney and he enrolled in St. Ignatius College, a Jesuit grammar school noted for its discipline. If the students were unruly, they would be physically punished, but punishment wouldn't be meted out until the end of the school day. It was here that Hitchcock first learned fear, the anticipation of punishment at the end of the school day. He left St. Ignatius in 1913 and enrolled in night classes at the London County Council School of Engineering and Navigation in Poplar. On December 12, 1914, his father, who had been suffering from emphysema and kidney disease, died at the age of 52. To support his mother, since his siblings had moved out at the time, Hitchcock took a job for 15 shillings a week as a technical clerk at the Henley Telegraph and Cable Company in Bloomfield Street near London Wall. He continued to go to night school, and in 1919 got a job at Famous Players Lasky, the production arm of Paramount Pictures in the United States, which was opening a studio in London. When Paramount pulled out of London in 1922, Hitchcock was hired as assistant director by a new firm run in the same location by Michael Balcon, later known as Gainsborough Pictures. He worked on several films including Woman to Woman, The White Shadow, The Passionate Adventure, The Blackguard, and The Prude's Fall. He also watched part of the making of F.W. Murnau's The Last Laugh. He also met his future wife, Alma Reville, who was the editor and script girl on Woman to Woman. In the summer of 1925, Balcon asked Hitchcock to direct The Pleasure Garden, a co-production of Gainsborough and the German company Imelka at the Gesellschaft studio near Munich. Although the film was a commercial flop, Balcon liked Hitchcock's work, and production faced obstacles from which Hitchcock would later learn. He would direct The Mountain Eagle, which Hitchcock called a very bad movie, and in any case is lost. A year later, Hitchcock wrote and directed The Ring, which got positive reviews. Hitchcock established himself as a name director with his first thriller, The Lodger, a study of the London fog, released in 1927. And, by the way, it's a silent movie. The film is about a serial killer who is murdering young blonde women in London and only on Tuesdays. Hitchcock wanted the leading man to be guilty, but the star was matinee idol Ivor Novello and thus could not be the villain. Released in January 1927 and influenced by German Expressionism, The Lodger was a commercial and critical success. Hitchcock began work on his 10th film, Blackmail, when its production company, British International Pictures, converted its Elstree studios to sound. In the United States, sound films made a rapid development from the use of brief sound segments in The Jazz Singer, released in 1927, to the first full sound feature, Lights of New York, released in 1928. In fact, the film began production as a silent film. To cash in on the new popularity of talkies, the film's producer, John Maxwell, gave Hitchcock the go-ahead to film a portion of the movie in sound. Most sources say that Hitchcock thought the idea absurd and surreptitiously filmed almost the entire feature in sound. In reality, the silent version, which was largely completed, was cleverly used for several sequences with non-synchronous sound and dialogue where the actors' faces were not visible. The opening 6.5 minutes of the sound version are silent, with musical accompaniment, as are numerous shorter scenes later, and the entire final chase sequence from the silent version with occasional non-synchronous vocal interjections, including Donald Calthrop's last words on the dome of the British Museum's reading room. So the question will be raised, does the Blackmail DVD qualify as a low-budget review? Well, in order to qualify as a low-budget review, the cost of the DVD has to be less than or equal to $13.91. I bought this DVD at Toys R Us for $2. To indicate how long ago this was, all Toys R Us locations closed at the end of June in 2018. So the franchise has been functioning in over 5 years. Well, actually, that may not be true because I'm looking here. I'll see. On December 16th, 2021, Toys R Us opened a 2-store flagship store at the American Dream Mall in New Jersey. On August 7th, 2022, Toys R Us opened new locations in the United States, California, Georgia, New Jersey, Illinois, Nevada, Louisiana, New York, Maryland, and Missouri. So apparently, Toys R Us has been revived, but this is the old store, not the new store. I purchased this DVD around 2006. So in any case, Amazon also has this DVD. The special edition DVD is available for $9.99. It was released in August of 2019. The standard DVD is available for $12.95. It was released in January of 2011. There's another DVD available for $12.75, and it has the same cover as the DVD I bought at Toys R Us. So all these are less than $13.91. It's possible that you can get the DVD for less than you can get it at Amazon at some discount store like Walmart or BJ's. For example, like Walmart has a big bin of DVDs for like $5, and maybe you can get it from there. In any case, $9.99 for classic Hitchcock shouldn't break the bank. There's an interesting footnote here. Why are DVDs for early Hitchcock movies so cheap? It seems to be because Hitchcock movies like Blackmail are heavily bootleg, not because they're in the public domain. So let me explain this. I was uncertain as to whether or not Blackmail was in the public domain, so I went on I did a web search, and I found the following article about the copyright status of Hitchcock's films. At the time Hitchcock made these films, the Copyright Act of 1911 was in place. This legislation did not specifically mention motion pictures, and so films were protected either as dramatic works or as a series of photographs for a period of 50 years, after which they would enter the public domain. So, in 1976, the 50-year period for copyright would expire with the oldest Hitchcock films. So, in 1977, The Lodger would reach the public domain, and by 1979, Blackmail would enter the public domain. It's in the public domain, right? Well, not really. We also get this excerpt from the same article. In 1993, the European Union Directive 93/98/EEC came into force and was adopted by the United Kingdom in 1995, coming into force on July 1st, 1995. The purpose of this directive was to harmonize the term of copyright protection within Europe. The directive specifically protects films for a period of 70 years from the death of the last of the following: the principal director, the author of the screenplay, the author of the dialogue, and the composer of music specifically created for use in the film. So, I saw another site where it said that the law took effect on January 1st, 1996. So it would seem that Blackmail entered the public domain in 1979 and was in the public domain temporarily and was removed from the public domain in either 1995 or 1996, so no later than 1996. But starting in 2021, Hitchcock's earliest films started to re-enter the U.S. public domain, though for the original version, not the official restored versions. Blackmail will re-enter the public domain in the United States at the end of 2025 for the original silent scoreless form. So yeah, there you go. Apparently that's the answer about whether Blackmail is in the public domain or not. It was in the public domain, but it's not anymore. But it will re-enter the public domain eventually.
What happened last night?
Let me go!
Why don't you tell me? Look. You know what I found there?
Any news of the murder? No, nothing yet. Are you, quite sure?
What the hell business is of yours, anyway?
What a chance for blackmail.
The movie opens on April 26, 1929. After a hard day's work of arrests, booking, and incarceration, Detective Frank Weber, played by John Longden, is ready to live it up, which means he's going to take out his girlfriend, Alice White, played by Annie Andra. They go to a crowded tea house where they get into an argument about what movie they should watch, and Frank storms out. He sees Alice leave with Mr. Crew, played by Cyril Richard, an artist she had earlier agreed to meet. Crew persuades a reluctant Alice into coming up to see his studio. There, she paints a cartoonish drawing of his face. Crew makes an unwanted advance on Alice. She is disgusted and preparing to leave when he steals Alice's dress and attempts to rape her. Her cries for help are not heard on the street below them. Thus, Alice grabs a bread knife and stabs Crew to death. She angrily tears a hole in the painting of a laughing clown and attempts to remove any evidence of her presence in the apartment, painting over her signature in the cartoon canvas, but leaves her gloves behind. After Alice leaves the apartment, she wanders the street of London in a daze until returning to her home in the morning. By then, the landlady has discovered the body and has called the police, who are on the scene. Frank is assigned to the case and finds one of Alice's gloves. He recognizes Crew, but conceals this from his colleagues. Taking the glove, he goes to see Alice at her father's tobacco shop, but she is too distraught to speak. In the meantime, Tracy, played by Donald Calthrop, a grifter and a small-time blackmailer, saw Alice leave Crew's apartment and found the other glove. He arrives at the store and overheard them speaking in the shop's telephone booth. He sees Frank with the other glove and attempts to blackmail them. His first demands are petty ones, and they accede to them. Frank learns by phone that the police want Tracy for questioning. He He has a criminal record and was seen near the scene of the crime. Frank sends for policemen and tells Tracy that he'll pay for the murder. The next scene is a battle of nerves between Tracy on one side and Frank and Alice on the other side. Tracy is confident that Alice murdered Crew, and Frank is equally confident that they can frame the murder on Tracy. Finally, when the police arrive, Tracy's nerves break and he flees the shop. The chase leads to the British Museum, where Tracy climbs onto the domed roof of the reading room and slips, crashing through a skylight and falling to his death inside. The police assume that he was the murderer. In the meantime, Alice decides to give herself up and goes to see the Chief Inspector of Scotland Yard. Before she can confess to him, the inspector receives a phone call and asks Frank to deal with it. Alice confesses to Frank that she killed Crew, but it was in self-defense against attempted rape. They leave together, and as they do, the policeman walks past carrying the damaged painting of the Laughing Clown and the cartoon canvas where Alice painted over her name. It should be noted that Blackmail is the first feature-length sound film in Great Britain, but there is much more to this movie than historical interest. It was voted one of the best movies in 1929, but most of the people who saw it saw the silent version of the film. And the movie works as a silent film, especially since Annie Andra was a Czech-born actress, and the fact that she spoke English with a Czech accent does not matter because it's a silent movie, and all of the actors and actresses were familiar with the language of the silent movie, and they make the appropriate gestures accordingly. On the other hand, the technology of sound on film was in its infancy, and Hitchcock felt that viewers would not be able to understand Andra's foreign accent. Post-production on sound films was also in its infancy, and it was not possible to dub dialogue after the fact. Thus, Andra lip-syncs her lines, which are being said off-camera by Joan Barry. This causes some awkwardness when Andra speaks. But other than that, Hitchcock has thrown a curveball with the advent of talkies, and to take the baseball analogy further, he hits it out of the park. Take the place of microphones, for example. In Lights of New York, and also the other movies I've seen from the early talkies, for example, Atlantic, the microphone was stationary, and you could see the actors moving close to the mic. In Blackmail, Hitchcock had the mic on a boom. But it's not just getting the fundamentals right that Hitchcock excelled at. He was eager to use sound in a creative manner. The morning after Alice killed Crew, she sits down to have breakfast with her parents. A local gossip joins them who talks about the murder. As she talks, ultimately only the word knife is distinct. Her father asks her to cut some bread. Eventually, she becomes so agitated that she drops the knife. The scene is, in a word, compelling. Of course, in the silent version, they had to do this with intertitle cards, a different actress as the gossip, and interestingly enough, a creepy shadow is cast along the bread as Alice reaches for the knife. I think this is indicative of German expressionism. I think they did a similar thing in Nosferatu with Warlock's shadow. Anyway, a simple web search for the silent version of the knife scene should yield results for those curious enough to view it, and I leave it to you to decide if the silent version is as compelling. But the sound version demonstrates that Hitchcock not only mastered the medium, but he actively embraced it.
I couldn't look back in the face after what happened last night. And Andrew had very noses.
Mind you, I don't think myself it's altogether the police's fault. What I mean is they have to wink at some things. I mean, it's one thing to buy chocolates out of ours, but it's quite another to stick a knife into a gentleman. I must say I feel the same way about that, too. A good, clean, honest whack over the head with a brick is one thing. There's something British about that. But knives... No, knives is not right. I must say that's what I think and that's what I feel. Whatever the provocation, I could never use a knife. Now, mind you, a knife is a difficult thing to handle. I mean, any knife. I mean, if you use a penknife, a knife, a butcher's knife.
Alice, cut us a bit of bread, will you?
Knife. What's that other knife? A neck knife. A knife is the same thing. Be careful of a knife. You come up against a knife. I mean, in Chelsea, you mustn't use a knife.
Yeah, you ought to have been more careful. Might have cut somebody with that.
Blackmail includes a motif that would soon be established in future Hitchcock movies, the theme of the guilty woman. We see it again in Psycho and The Birds. Hitchcock also said something about blondes making ideal victims, and yes, Alice is a blonde and the victim of an attempted rape. Here, once Alice has killed Crew, she is ridden with guilt and she starts to see things differently. A painting of a laughing clown seems to mock her, and a liquor advertisement morphs from a cocktail into a knife. She sees multiple arms with limp wrists, which is an obvious throwback to Crew's lifeless body. A local gossip's banter is reduced to where the only audible word is knife. This is a powerful way to convey Alice's guilt, all done with the palette of the modern movie director. I should say something about the portrayal of police officers in this movie. Blackmail was released in July 1929. The Hays Code, which was a set of industry guidelines for self-censorship of movie content that was applied to most motion pictures, was not enforced until 1934. Thus, Blackmail was a pre-code movie. In this movie, we see Frank Weber, the boyfriend of Alice White, who is a Scotland Yard detective. He is assigned to the case of Crew's murder, and all evidence points to Alice. But he is willing to frame Tracy, who is a grifter with a criminal record but also an innocent man, for murder so that Alice will not be found guilty. And this is at a time before Alice said that she killed Crew in self-defense, if Alice can even be believed at this point. So he's willing to let an innocent man be charged with murder to absolve Alice. It's unfair to Tracy, who's going to be charged with the crime, and it's also unfair to the community, in which Alice will go unpunished for her crime. Thus, Frank is not evil, but he's not a good guy. I'm pretty sure that this movie would not pass muster under the Hays Code, in which policemen are traditionally seen as the good guys. So it is somewhat interesting that Hitchcock decided to give his characters a level of depth which typically is not seen in a movie like this. Detective Frank Weber, and this is not to say anything about Alice White, which has all kinds of levels of complexity. Detective Frank Weber is not a typical hero, rather he is a flawed individual. He's noble in that he's willing to protect his girlfriend, but to the level to which he's willing to do so causes him, in my opinion, to twist his priorities. If Tracy had not died in the chase, but instead lived and was arrested and tried, he could have revealed that Frank was trying to suppress evidence of Alice's guilt. Depending on his success in this endeavor, Frank could be fired and even arrested, convicted, and incarcerated. He knows that Alice is likely guilty, but he's willing to suppress the truth and let an innocent man take the fall. The fact that we can empathize with his behavior doesn't mean that it's excusable. In any case, these are just a few of the thoughts that I've had watching this movie again. I won't even talk about the Hitchcock cameo in which he's an annoyed commuter reading a book taunted by a boy on the London Underground. Apparently the Hitchcock cameo started with The Lodger. I also want to talk about the chase at the British Museum, which starts a tradition of chase scenes in famous landmarks such as North by Northwest, which features a chase along Mount Rushmore. Blackmail, by all accounts, is an excellent movie. Good for anybody who wants to see a good suspense film, no matter the age, and for people who want to see the development of Hitchcock as a director. I give it a 10 out of 10. Apart from the movie, the DVD has biographies of Alfred Hitchcock, Annie Andra, and Cyril Richard, although it should be noted that The Lodger was released in 1927, not in 1939 as the DVD states. It also has filmographies for Hitchcock, Andra, and Richard, and a photo gallery that incorporates screen captures from the movie. This doesn't seem like much material. If I'm that curious about the movie, I can search the interwebs, but for $2 it's good to have anything extra. Before I give my concluding remarks, I should add a disclaimer. If you do not like black and white movies, this movie is not for you. If you do not like old movies, this movie is not for you. That having been said, Blackmail is an excellent movie, and not just for aficionados of old movies. It's a good suspense movie, interesting to see as the first talkie in Great Britain, and also compelling drama. For $2, which is the amount that I paid at Toys R Us, I would highly recommend this movie. For $9.99 was the cheapest DVD you could get from Amazon, I would still highly recommend the movie. For $12.95, I would suggest cheaper alternatives. As of the production of this video, the movie, in spite of the fact that it's not in the public domain, is available on YouTube. This is the cheapest alternative. It's also available on Amazon Prime for $3.99 to rent, so there's that. But otherwise, I'd highly recommend it. That's it for this video. Like the video if you like it, and comment on the video below. If you like this video, be sure to hit the subscribe button to be informed about the latest low-budget reviews video updates. As always, thanks for watching.